get it.
And also it's very possible that it's all original in there.
Well, I know that this is PVC.
Yeah. Well, if it gets further.
Can you run that bathtub for me for just a sec? Just like 3 seconds. Perfect. So what we have here on the left side of the screen is a tie-in for something. And I was just trying to figure out what that was. Now, is there a bathroom on the other side of this wall?
No.
Okay. So I'm a little bit confused as to what this tie-in is.
Yeah.
But it's also not uncommon to have tie-ins for things that you wouldn't expect where they're at. But I was just hoping that was the bathtub because at least would be something that's
The kitchen is
explainable.
right below here. I don't know if that.
We're not throwing it down.
Yeah. So right now I'm only 6 feet from the center of the reel. So I'm just barely below this level.
Well, the person who owned the house before definitely did a lot of creative.
Creative plumbing.
Creative everything. Oh, gosh. That looks old.
That is very old.
7 feet.
Yeah, and that's really only like 3.5 feet down the pipe.
Right.
So good news is it's already up the wall.
Yeah.
So as far as, what a replacement looks like, when you have galvanized or cast iron that's in this state where it's so corroded, even though it's in a vertical, which is probably the saving grace of why this hasn't been a bigger issue more commonly, it turns into like Velcro on the inside.
Yeah.
So it catches everything.
Yeah.
So any kind of, basically, ideally in a plumbing world, we have nothing that slows down the velocity of water or solids going down the pipe.
Okay.
Now, I also understand that that's not the case when you're in older plumbing, right? There's going to be things. My bigger concern is if you look on the right-hand side where the bottom of the pipe is, do you see that almost canyon-looking thing in appearance?
Yeah.
That is actually the erosion from the water taking the pipe away with it.
Okay.
So it's not buildup on the sides, it's actually a degradation on the bottom.
Yeah.
Is this visible? So right beneath us is the kitchen, you said, right?
Yeah, I mean, the kitchen sink is probably just right below where you're sitting, basically.
Okay. So I am
Yeah.
very curious where this pipe is. But seeing this section right here, this screams it's time for replacement. There's not a lot of maintenance you can do to it. And the next steps, if this is a horizontal that's like above a kitchen ceiling, the next steps are typically it starts dripping out the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that water just sits on the top of the ceiling drywall, and then eventually it just gets through.
Right.
But seeing holes like that from the inside of the pipe are nearly impossible. Normally you look at the outside of the galvanized and you'll see rust spots or calcium or something like that. But that's definitely not something we like seeing, especially because it just keeps on going. So it's not really one section that's in need, it's kind of the whole thing.
Would you, in looking at this and your experience, these aren't the original pipes. I mean, our house was built in 1908.
I would say 100% these are the original pipes. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, these are So normally, if I'm looking at a piece of galvanized from like a house from, let's say, the 60s, there's going to be a little bit of rust, there's going to be a little bit of pitting, but otherwise relatively fine. When I'm pushing my camera through and I'm physically feeling the camera bump up and down, we're in original pipes. It's very old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very old.
Okay.
So, you've definitely gotten about twice the lifespan of a normal galvanized piece of plumbing. So that's honestly the reason why you're probably not having this issue is pipes from before the First World War were just thicker.
Yeah.
They weren't better, weren't better steel, just thicker. Meaning you have a lot more to degrade before it starts to fully fall apart. And then we turn down into a different section here, and this is 13 feet from the center of the reel. So probably about 10 feet. This is likely where you were getting stuck if we're pretty close about that 10-foot mark. Was on that bend and right here after it. Because you can see our pipe starts to get narrower. And that's again just from rust and scale closing in on the pipe. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to be able to make this turn.
Okay.
And that could be for a couple reasons. Probably just due to it being super rough on the edges, plus a little bit smaller, plus a hard 90. So
Okay.
There are certain things we don't use in the plumbing world anymore for drainage, and those are like short 90s
Yeah.
because they're kind of prone to stuff like this.
Yeah.
Even with new material, right? Stuff can get stuck in there.
Okay.
We use longer sweeping 90s instead, which eliminate that issue.
Makes sense, that's where you would stuff.
Yeah, there's 2 turns back to back.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
But I will absolutely say, unequivocally, this is something that is in need of replacement.
Alright.
Like if you look at the top of the pipe on the upper left, that's what it looks like when it's like 50 years old. A little bit rough, you have a little bit of buildup on the bottom.
Yeah.
But this section, while it looks terrible, this is infinitely worse. Once we start getting out of round and we start getting into like an egg shape with the crater or something, that to me it's probably already leaking at these joints, but it might just be seeping and not quite dripping.
Got it.
And then rust plugs the holes. So, I mean, that's,
Rust.
yeah, thanks, Rust.
Hey, we don't get to say that too often, right?
I don't think I've ever heard that one before in my profession.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rust. It is keeping it from leaking, so I guess there is some advantage.
Yeah.
But again, you can just see just from a diameter perspective, you can see how much smaller it gets from
Yeah, totally.
new to old. So that's, I mean, that alone is pretty dramatic and
I've never
telling.
seen it like that. I don't know what we saw.
But what I will say is every time you have it cabled, even though the cables aren't designed to do it, they're causing a little bit more degradation in the
Oh
pipe.
yeah, just like when I snake it.
Right, exactly. They're chipping away at certain things. So, one, I can certainly write up what options look like for that.
Sure.
I don't know exactly where it goes at this moment, but luckily the way that we do our estimates is fine with that.
Okay.
Typically, it's for something like this, I normally recommend you do a full day, and that includes time to cut into like a ceiling if we need to.
Yeah.
We're not going to blindly cut. To be
Yeah,
super
no, I
clear,
understand.
we use the thermal camera to find everything.
Okay.
So we're only cutting exactly where we need to.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the repair portion, I'm a more holistic individual when it comes to plumbing stuff. I also know that it is not my money that's being spent.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of replacing everything that you possibly can at the same time. The value is better than doing it in bits and pieces. It is more expensive, but the value is better. And you're not going to have an issue 5 feet further down, where you have to
Right.
come back and then have us out again to do a 5-foot section again.
Yeah.
As well.
When you say everything, are we talking about this line to the stack or like everything?
Yeah, so I write up options for a lot of different things.
Okay.
What I'll normally do is I'll start with option 1, which is where is our most dastardly section?
The isolated.
And then we say, okay, we'll do this section right here. There is a huge caveat to that. Cutting into older galvanized is sometimes you cut and then you have to cut 3 feet further back.
Right.
And then you have to cut 2 feet further back.
Because it cracks.
Exactly. So it just depends on how destroyed the bottom is
Mm-hmm.
and just how brittle it is. Because if we take a pipe wrench and try to unthread it, it's just going to shred the whole thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So spot repairs are always under the assumption that in this material specifically, like we're all going to be very happy and lucky if we don't need to do more.
Okay.
That being said, that's why I normally recommend just do the whole line.
Yeah.
Because there's no surprises. We know exactly what we're getting into. It's the whole line. And then there's the option, of course, that I always write up, which is all the remaining existing drainage in the house.
Okay.
So you don't have to deal with this on every other fixture that you have in the home.
Yeah, we know. I mean, I know that at least so there's 3 bathrooms. One's brand new in the basement, so that was I'm not concerned with.
Excellent.
The plumbing that's on the main floor bathroom, because I can see it from in the basement from where I have my office/shop, is also PVC.
Nice.
Yeah, because that was an addition.
And I can double check, but I think the kitchen sink is as well. So it's basically, it might be this line, the main stack, which is just back here in the corner.
Yeah.
There's a crawl space if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I figured it's right here. Toilets are always within about 3 feet of the stack.
Yeah, and then otherwise, yeah, I'd have to look. I don't know about inside down in the basement, actually into the foundation. Then
Yeah, that stuff is